Okay, it is 3:38 on June 2nd. I'll call the Ways and Means Committee to order. Kathy, if you would call the roll.
Commissioner Foster.
Here.
Commissioner Hovey Wright.
Here.
Chairman Hughes.
Here.
Commissioner Laring.
Here.
Commissioner Mahoney.
Here.
Commissioner Nash.
Here.
Commissioner Snyder. Commissioner Wilkins. Commissioner Skolnick.
Here.
7 present.
Okay, we have a quorum. The first item of business is approval of the minutes of the May 19th, 2020 meeting.
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have support?
Second, Marcia.
All right, are there any comments, corrections? Anything on the minutes of May 19th? If not, we'll vote. Kathy, could you do a roll call, please?
Commissioner Foster.
Yes.
Commissioner Hovey Wright.
Yes.
Chairman Hughes.
Yes.
Commissioner Laring.
Yes.
Commissioner Mahoney.
Yes.
Commissioner Nash.
Yes.
Commissioner Snyder. Commissioner Wilkins. Commissioner Skolnick.
Yes.
7 yes.
Mark, did you say that Commissioner Wilkins was on the phone with somebody?
Yes, I'm on.
Okay. Do you want to mark Commissioner Wilkins present?
Yes.
We just voted on the minutes, real esteem. Do you want to vote on that?
I did. You didn't hear me? Yes.
Did not. Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the next item is public comment on an agenda item, an item that's on the agenda for today's meeting. If you have a cell phone, you can raise and lower your hand to speak by dialing *9. And do you see anybody? There's 39 people call.
No, I'm looking through it. Kathy's looking through it. Kristen's looking through it as well. No one has raised their hand or unmuted themselves to speak.
Okay, then we'll move. We will move on to items for consideration. The first item is WM 20/06-45. Approved payment of the accounts payable of $10,965,180 covering the period of May 8th, 2020 through May 21st, 2020 for checks, P-card, and electronic fund transfer payments covering the period April 1st, 2020 through April 30th, 2020 as presented by the county clerk.
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion. Did we have
Support.
Marcia.
Support.
Okay. Kathy, did you see that? Okay. Any questions or comments? Beth, it's your.
I'd just like to thank Beth Dick for getting the information back to me that I requested on some of these questions. Thank you.
Okay. All right. We'll vote. Kathy, roll call, please.
Commissioner Hovey Wright.
Yes.
Chairman Hughes.
Yes.
Commissioner Laring.
No.
Commissioner Mahoney.
Yes.
Commissioner Nash.
Yes.
Commissioner Skolnick.
Yes.
Commissioner Snyder.
Yes.
Commissioner Wilkins.
Yes.
Commissioner Foster.
Yes.
8 yes, 1 no.
Okay. The next item is WM 20/06-46. to approve the operating levy of 5.6978 mils for Muskegon County to be levied in July 2020, the operating levy of 0.3220 mils for the Lakeshore Museum Center to be levied in December 2020, the operating levy of 0.0751 mils for the Department of Veterans Affairs to be levied in December 2020, the operating levy of 0.2999 mils for Muskegon County Central Dispatch to be levied in December 2020, and the operating levy of 0.4999 for PA 39 of 1976, Activities or Services for Older Persons Act to be levied December 2020, and to authorize the Muskegon County Clerk and the Chair of the Muskegon County Board of Commissioners to sign the associated forms required by the state of Michigan, which will be submitted to the state of Michigan by the Muskegon County Equalization Department.
So moved.
Support.
Support.
Okay, this is something that needs to be done annually. Are there any comments or questions, concerns?
Mr. Chair, may I?
Yes, Dave.
Beth, did
Yes.
I understand that this was actually a little bit less than the previous year?
That is correct. This year, we actually had the impact of the Headley Amendment, which required us to actually roll back our millage rate slightly from the prior year. So, or all of these rates actually. So the county operating levy last year was 5.6984 mils. It's now 5.6978 mils. The museum was 3.221 last year, rolled back to 3.220. The next one, which is the veterans, was 0.752 last year. It's been rolled back to 751. And the veterans was 0.3, now it's 0.2999, and the senior millage was 0.5, and now it's 4.999. So yeah, the Headley impacted us this year for the first time since 2002. We had been at 5.6984 mils going all the way back to 2002, and it had not been reduced, but this year, due to the Headley impact, it had to be rolled back slightly.
Thank you, Beth.
You're welcome.
Anybody else? If not, we'll vote. I need a roll call, Kathy, please.
Chairman Hughes,
Yes.
Commissioner Laring,
Yes.
Commissioner Mahoney,
Yes.
Commissioner Nash,
Yes.
Commissioner Skolnick,
Yes.
Commissioner Snyder,
Yes.
Commissioner Wilkins,
Yes.
Commissioner Foster,
Yes.
Commissioner Hovey Wright. Unmute you. Commissioner Hovey Wright. Thank you.
Yes.
That's 9 yes.
Okay, thank you, Kathy.
And also, can I just also mention that we will be holding the public hearing on these millage rates at the full board meeting next week on the 9th, and I will be doing a short PowerPoint presentation to explain what the difference is, whether we were to not hold a public hearing versus holding the public hearing. So approving the rates at Ways and Means still means that we have a public hearing before final approval of the rates.
Okay, thank you, Beth. All right, we'll move on to the final item. It's WM 20/06-47 to approve the awarding of a 3-year contract with 2 optional 1-year renewals for credit and debit card processing services, RFP 20-2368, to all paid pending corporate counsel review.
So moved. Marcia.
Second, Snyder.
Okay. Are there any questions? Beth did send out the detail that was done in the review of the bids. And I will say, after looking at the analysis, I can understand how difficult.
Well done. Well
And
done.
I had asked for the information to be sent out because I had some concerns about whether this would be beneficial to the residents, because I do have a lot of complaints about how high the interest is to make a credit card payment. So I really appreciate you getting back with me on that, Beth. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Are there any other questions or comments on this? If not, Kathy, roll call, please.
Commissioner Foster,
Yes.
Commissioner Hovey Wright,
Yes.
Chairman Hughes,
Yes.
Commissioner Laring,
Yes.
Commissioner Mahoney,
Yes.
Commissioner Nash,
Yes.
Commissioner Snyder,
Yes.
Commissioner Wilkins,
Yes.
Commissioner Skolnick,
Yes.
9 yes.
Okay. Thank you, Kathy. Hey, Beth, just
Yep.
a quick question on this. Why do you think it isn't just a flat fee across everything?
It's more typical that it's based on a percentage of the transaction than a flat fee. And there was one of the responses that we got that did do a flat fee for a portion of transactions and a percentage for the others. So it's more common to have a percentage. I don't know why.
No, I mean a percentage, but 2.5 or 3, whatever the fee is, because that's what a normal business would just have one fee for every transaction. I don't know. It was complicated.
Yes.
Okay, moving on to old business. Does anyone have any old business for the Ways and Means? Don't see anybody. New business. Does anyone have any new business for the Ways and
Commissioner
Means?
Skolnick, this is Mark. I would like to discuss Executive Order 110 under Ways and Means, with your permission.
I'm sorry, discuss what, Mark?
Executive Order 110, which was released last night
Yes, go ahead.
about businesses opening back up. Up till now, the court's Supreme Court order and the governor's order have been in line with one another. I mean, somewhat in line, not perfectly, but at least they're somewhat in the same course. As we discussed, the courts has a step process to go through, and that's based off the numbers. There has to be so many days where our continued decline of the coronavirus continues to drop, up to 28 days at some point before the public's returns. That being said, the courts are having a tremendous amount of work being done remotely through Zoom. There are a few that do come to the courthouse, but they're on a list and they are allowed in through the sheriff's deputies, which are doing a fabulous job up front as well. So now we've kind of split roads where some of our departments could actually, some employees could return to work instead of working remotely. But the order also goes on to say that they encourage us to continue working remotely, and also that they encourage less than 10 in a room, even though it does say on page 4 the fact that that's get-togethers really doesn't address businesses of 10, but we've kind of adopted that over the last 8 weeks of 10 inside of a room. So even us as a board, when do we come back together? Needs to be discussed as well. Our current boardroom, putting us in there plus staff, really would not allow any public unless public was only allowed to go through Zoom or a platform thereof. So we have to discuss that. But more importantly, we got to let the public know that we still have to follow our work plan going forward, which requires us to have a safe environment for our employees to return to work, we need a safe environment for our community, the public coming into our facility. After meeting with them this morning, there are some issues with just saying everybody's going to be open up on the 15th or the 22nd or the 29th of June. It varies quite differently. Example, the courts and Chief Judge Hicks has joined us today too to address this very item. They might not be able to start until the end of June or 1st of July based on the 28 days that they are required to follow. However, the executive order released last night did not really address those levels as the Supreme Court did. So that's one complex of it. The other thing is with some departments have not received the correct, not the correct, but the plastic shields. They've been on order, down back order. So some departments cannot bring those staff back to work until those are in place, until it's safe for our employees to return. Other departments are working 100% remotely. So it's been very successful for them to work 100% remotely. As I see everybody on the screens here, I could talk about every department, but to keep this somewhat short, it's complex to say the least how we can bring everybody back, and we got to bring back everybody slowly. So the last board meeting we had, we said we'd have employees at some departments could come back the week of the 15th, those who are working remotely, and start evaluating their office space, evaluating safe distances, make sure everyone has a mask the week of the 15th. We could have some start as early as the 8th, but we can't have everybody back because we don't have enough space. And that's an issue in itself. So some of our staff, I'll use HR for example, when they do come back, HR, Human Resources, is looking at the idea of having half of them return one week, the other half return next week, and back and forth. Other departments just don't have enough room for all their employees. And so they're trying to figure out ways to work remotely. So I encourage them to continue working remotely. So the big question is, when do our residents are able to walk in through our doors? And that is hard to give a date. Kathy Moore can address that based on numbers.
Mark, I'd like to jump in a second and just
Yes.
tell you that, I'm really happy with the decision we made last week on this. And I noticed that several of the municipalities, mine being the largest township in the county, has followed our lead, and they're going to be closed on Fridays just like we are, and they're going to bring their people back at the same rate. Since we kind of set the standard, I don't think it would be right for us to change as the municipalities are following our lead. I think we need to leave our start the same and let the departments bring people back as they, are capable of doing it. And leave our start dates and everything the same as we did last week.
And that's where I was kind of going with this. I think you're right, because there's some departments that don't have the supplies, or not necessarily supplies, but the shields, sneeze guard shields, a better term for that, I guess. They're not in yet, so they cannot even put those up yet. So there wasn't one department asking to start early, except for one. I want to talk to you about that as well, because I support Bob Lukens on that. But as far as everybody else go, status quo with the week of the 15th. If they want to have a couple, there's a lot of departments that are working. That was loud and clear. I heard today that they wanted me to make sure that all departments are working and they're getting things done. And it's remotely. So with that being said, at some point in time, once it's safe to come back, we would encourage the public to open those doors. But right now we're not there. And so the next 2 weeks, we're still going to have employees working from home or fixing up their office to make sure they can return to work, which brings us to the 22nd. And Chief Judge, if you would chime in here, your numbers still don't reach the 22nd within 28 days. So even if we did open up some departments on the 22nd, the courts could not. I'll pause there for a second. Chief Judge, you want to address your executive order?
Sure. I think you've summarized it pretty nicely. Let me start by thanking all of you for your support all the way through this. It's been a pretty wild ride for all of us. There are times when the governor's guidance and the Supreme Court's guidance are a bit different, but some of what I'm going to say to you, and I'll invite comment from a couple of our folks who are really all over this, like Patrick Finnegan in District Court. But some of this is redundant. The state court has a 4-phase plan. You're essentially going to do 14 days in each phase, and we're still at phase 0. The good news is the communication we have today suggests that we ought to be entering phase 1 on June 8th, barring some surprise in all these statistical numbers. But the Supreme Court's plan has refrained from giving us goals. Like on January 21, we'll do, or June 21, we'll do this, or on July 5, we'll do this. Now, if things go well, and if the numbers hold, if we enter phase 1 on June 8th, hopefully we'll be headed for phase 2 on or about June 22. And then it's not until we get to phase 3, which again will hopefully be about 14 days later, that things are starting to make, they look a little more normal. For example, we get to phase 3, the order says that on-site operations and off-site contacts, like with probation agents and probationers, can be fully resumed. But even then, even at phase 3, it still says large venues still have to operate under the 6-foot protocol. And then finally, separately, we still have the standalone order that forbids any jury trials until June 22. And so I think the June 22 deadline for jury trials is probably unworkable, and that would have to be adjusted until we meet all the distancing needs. So I'm sorry to be so complicated, but that's where we're at. One of the things we worked at our meeting today was trying to figure out the differences between the governor's order and the Supreme Court's order. And when I talked to our folks in Lansing today, they just kind of said, oh, we don't see any inconsistencies, just soldier ahead on the state court order. So I mean, if we need to clean up anything, I would invite Mr. Finnegan or Judge Kostrava to bail me out here.
No, I think Judge Hicks, you summed that up well, as did Mr. Eichenbarth. To the extent that there is any inconsistency, it's simply by virtue of the notion that the court isn't married to a particular date, and that we don't have a hard date that we can say on this date we are going to do this. It's just really a matter of the operations that we're conducting, and there are many, are going to be taking place remotely for the most part. And for the next few weeks, that's going to remain the same. And even as we move to those phases 1 and 2, it may be a change for some courts around the state, but for us here in Muskegon, I think we're a little bit ahead of the game in that we're doing phase 1 and phase 2 operations right now. We're conducting those hearings remotely. We're doing the work that needs to be done remotely. So we're not going to see any substantive change in terms of our staffing levels or in terms of the type of work that we're doing as we pass through phases 1 and 2.
Phase 2, which would take us to June 22, still requires us to maintain 6-foot distance, to use masks where we can't distance, and to use Zoom whenever we can. Use the virtual stuff.
Right.
Judge, I do think we do want to be as diligent as possible so that we don't contribute to making us stay away any longer than is absolutely necessary. So I agree with you and hope that that's where we continue.
Well, Commissioner and Chair, I really appreciate that. Like I said a minute ago, you folks have been enormously supportive. We appreciate that. You know, one thing that I do want to point out, there's a part of our docket that tends to get not much publicity, and that's the civil docket. Like in district court, it's the landlord-tenant things. For circuit court, it's the personal injury lawsuits and things like that. And there's the seawall case. I have one where one neighbor in Montague, Mr. Mahoney Commissioner Mahoney is suing one of his neighbors there on Old Trail. And I'm gonna win. And that's, yeah, I'll tell you who they are. You probably will side with the guy who's a local guy instead of the guy from Illinois, but we'll save that for another day.
Yeah.
But anyway, we're doing a lot of those via Zoom. You know, I think Judge Kostrava and I have had full days doing the Zoom. Judge Marietti he sentences 8 or 10 people with the Zoom, and you don't see the cars in the parking lot. but I'm having some pretty normal days with courtroom stuff. The civil cases, especially the lawyers in the Detroit metro area and Grand Rapids, they love it. They just Zoom in from their offices, and I make a recording in my courtroom. We make decisions. So there is more going on here than it might look if you just look at the parking lot.
Chief Judge Kostrava, did we leave anything out? Did you want to say anything?
No, I think Patrick and Judge Hicks have nicely outlined the phased reopening plan that we have been implementing now and working towards, and meeting weekly with Kathy Moore and doing our darndest to make sure we're moving forward. And I would just reiterate what Judge Hicks said. We're doing a lot of hearings via Zoom. I think last Wednesday I had 10. On Thursday, I think I conducted 25 Zoom hearings, and that was consistent the week before, and I expect it to be repeated this week as well. So we're doing our darndest to keep things moving as best we can. So I like the direction that we're moving. So that's all I have to add. That's all I have to add. If anybody has any questions about district court, I'd be happy to answer those questions as well.
So the plan is to stay the course as we decided last week, or the staff who aren't already working here come back. And when I say here, it's such here means South Campus, means wastewater, means parks. I mean, it's a variety of different buildings that we're talking about. So the idea is to have staff come back and fix their desks, their distancing, so they understand that it is safe for them to return. The other part I wanted to bring up is the parks. Parks is outside. You can actually have 100 people join you outside. So Bob Lukens and myself discussed it, and we're ready to open up the parks. We'd like to make that announcement, let them know tomorrow, so they can start making reservations as early as Friday to begin their outdoor camping. Again, the board approved the parks plan last week, and Bob is here to just answer any questions about the parks.
Mark, I think we've hashed this out numerous times, and I do too think that we're ready to move forward on the parks. I don't know if that requires a motion or if that comes underneath your power to do that, but it's time.
I would, with the occurrence here, I would like to go ahead and approve Bob to do that, so we can get that announcement out. If it's followed under Ways and Means as an approval motion, then we got to wait till next Tuesday, I believe, for full board to approve that as well. So under my executive order, I would recommend moving forward with it.
Mark,
that's what I would recommend too.
excuse me.
I have a question. Go ahead.
Someone was first. I missed that.
Oh, this is Bob Lukens, Community Development Director. Administrator, I'm just curious, you did say Friday. We could have the parks open by tomorrow.
No, I think we make the announcement tomorrow to open. It'll
Okay.
take a while for the campers to make schedules and do what they need to do to get out there by Friday.
Got it. Thank you.
Commissioner Hovey Wright.
Yes, before we said this would just be for RV, people had their own bathroom facilities. Is this going to be open to all campers, tents included?
Correct.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Does that mean our bathroom facilities will be open?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. And there will be posters that tell them can be spaced correctly?
There are, yes. We have a variety of different posters that will be hung throughout the parks, on playground equipment, at various other locations in the parks, to remind people to respect distancing, wash their hands, keep the facilities clean, and keep our parks clean.
Thank you, Bob.
Mark,
Very good, Bob.
Mark, do you need a motion today, or are you just going to move it forward at the full board meeting?
There was something noisy going on. I didn't catch the first part of that question.
Do you want a motion of some sort today to do this, or are you going to do it?
I'll just move forward. I will move forward with my executive order to start the parks officially tomorrow.
So you don't need a motion or anything?
I don't think so.
No, he does not.
Okay. Okay, I don't, we're moving now to public comment. Does anyone have any public comment? Anybody in the audience? There's 44 people on the call.
I don't see anybody raising their hand or unmuting themselves to speak.
Okay, final board comments. We still have one more meeting, but if anybody wants to say anything about, now's your chance. Okay, I need a motion to adjourn.
I'll move.
Support.
Support.
All those in favor, say aye.
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 We are adjourned.